Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is George Ortega, and I'm here to talk about happiness, because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Tonight, for our second Ways of Becoming Happiness show, we're going to be talking about more strategies and considerations that can help us to become happier. Okay, the first one I want to go through is the fact that religious people tend to be happier. The studies show that people who are active in religion, who go to church or synagogue and engage in religious activities regularly, tend to be somewhat happier than the rest of the population. In exploring why that is, we might want to think, for example, like a lot of religions, for example, with Judeo-Christianity, there's a belief in an afterlife. There's a belief not just in an afterlife, but that if we live good lives, we can expect to enjoy our eternity to a great extent. I mean, it's like it's the idea of heaven, of leaving this earth and going to something much better. Now, one can see how that would tend to help people become happier, to help us become happier, because when we're really looking forward to something so wonderful when we die, it's like we'd have to be afraid of death. So many people are afraid of dying because so to a certain extent, either they're not very religious, or they haven't incorporated certain religious beliefs like heaven. And I suppose you can take the viewpoint that that believing in heaven is just a belief. I mean, there's no way that we can know what happens when we die. However, the idea is that when we choose that belief, when we choose a belief that that there is an afterlife, that it gets better, that our eternity will be blissful. I mean, the more we choose to believe that, the better we will feel, and it really doesn't matter what happens eventually. The stronger our belief is, the happier we'll become. I think religion is also good because, see, we came from tribal societies, from more primitive societies, where there was more of a cohesiveness among people. There was more of a sense of get-togetherness, like a village society. And as we've developed more sociologically, become more advanced in terms of our socioeconomic system, basically a lot of those supports, a lot of what we used to have in the sense of community has really disappeared. And so with religion affords a wonderful opportunity to regain that sense of community. On weekends, Saturdays or Sundays, attending a regular religious service will bring you into a community that's there every week. It's kind of like, it's a community that is useful in many ways. I mean, goodness is very important to us, and goodness is actually very important to happiness. But and so that churches and synagogues bring us together under that kind of perspective. But it's also the idea of just being with people weekly. Just having a place, a community that's always there. And so these things, along I think with the religious teachings, there are many religious teachings about goodness and about happiness. I mean, happiness actually is in the Bible everywhere. So that, there's a lot of wisdom to be gained through religion, and that probably explains why, to a great extent, religious people are happier. Okay, our second consideration is that money, on the other hand, has very little effect on our happiness. It does tend to have an effect below the poverty line. In other words, when we're when we don't have enough of our basic needs like food and shelter and clothing, it makes it more difficult to be happy, to feel happy. Again, the only thing that really prevents us from being happy is not having enough food. So if we don't have much money, and let's say we're below the poverty line, we can nevertheless be very happy because we really do have everything necessary for that. But generally, over the poverty line, it has extremely little effect. And the idea is that even though this has been demonstrated through like 40 years of research on happiness and what makes us happy and what doesn't, the research has also found that happiness or money tends to be the vehicle that most of us believe will make us happiest. You know, when people are asked, well, you know, what is the one thing in life that if you had more of, you'd be happier? It's like almost all of us say money. And so it's very ironic that money really just doesn't have an effect. They've done studies, for example, where they'll question a lottery winner. Somebody's won a great deal of money in the lottery, and what happens is they've determined that 6 months, a year after the winning that amount, the individual is very happy. But after that, you know, it's like we become accustomed to having more, and then, you know, we tend to return to our basic level of happiness. Actually, in psychology, it's called adaptation level theory, and the idea is that we adapt to different circumstances. So again, having more money is something that really won't make us happier or much happier. So it doesn't make much sense to chase it. I mean, it's good to have it. Money can be good for many things in life. But really, it's just, in terms of happiness, you know, we're much wiser to seek it in other ways. Sometimes we feel that when other people are going through difficult situations, that we're called upon to be sad, that we should be sad for them. I mean, certainly we should feel empathy and compassion for people that are going through some kind of difficulty, but many of us feel that we should also become sad, that we should feel that and express that, and you know, sadness is a very unpleasant emotion. The idea here is that you know, when people need us, either individually or if people around the world need us as a country, we should be there for them out of a sense of responsibility and goodness. So we should definitely do what we can to help people, both in our immediate circle of friends and acquaintances and throughout the world, to become happier, to overcome problems and all. But that doesn't require becoming sad. As a matter of fact, when we really want to help people, a lot of times the best thing we can do is to not be sad, to just, it's kind of like if you take the example of a surgeon who's going through an operation. Let's say a person's you know, in danger of losing their life. You know, to be a surgeon, you can't have those kinds of emotions. You know, you've got to focus on what you're doing. It's got to be all, you know, the intelligence has to work. And so yeah, with sadness, you know, it's not necessary for helping people, and also sometimes it can be counterproductive. Sometimes, let's say when someone has a problem and we become sad, well, you know, feelings can be contagious. If they have a problem and we become sad, it could be that they become sadder because of our sadness. You know, when we take more of an optimistic approach, when we're there for them, when we're, you know, empathic and compassionate, when we listen and support, but not maintain or not adopt a kind of a sadness, then often we can help people out much more. Actually, that's something that that the psychological community has to abide by, because therapists generally see, you know, I don't know how many people each day, but you know, it would be impossible to feel sad, you know, at everyone's misfortune. And again, I think they realize that it's generally not necessary and sometimes counterproductive. Okay, here's something that I went through a bit in our last show. It's the idea of comparisons. A lot of times, you know, we'll have a tendency to compare ourselves with others. Who's doing better? Who's got, you know, the nicer lawn, the nicer house, the nicer job. I mean, you know, whatever it is. I mean, there are so many differences in life, so many things where one person will have more than the other. I mean, sense of humor, anything. And we'll a lot of times tend to compare. And this is really a bad habit. We sometimes develop it in school when we're actually just competing with each other for grades, you know, for success. We do learn to cooperate in school, fortunately, also, which is good. But yeah, when we compare with ourselves to each other, it just creates a situation where if the other person has more than we do, well, we're going to feel angry or sad or fearful. I mean, we'll feel a negative emotion. So generally, the idea is that it's not wise to compare ourselves with others, and if we can't resist the temptation, then it's wise to compare ourselves downward. In other words, if we choose to compare ourselves with those who have less than we do, less success, less whatever it is, then we'll tend to feel happier about ourselves. Personally, I believe there is a saying that I mentioned last week also, that comparisons are odious, and I think that makes a lot of sense. It's probably best not to compare ourselves at all, because when we compare, we compete, and you know, when we're with others, it's much, you know, in terms of our happiness, it's so much more pleasant to cooperate with the people that we're with instead of competing. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a song. Okay, this song actually should have gone in the last show, but I mixed up the songs. It's the last show was about happiness and its distractions. So this song is called "Sometimes the Paradise Hides," and it's about, yes, how sometimes we become distracted from our happiness in various ways. So okay, let's see how this goes.
Sometimes the paradise hides here yesterday, where today. Sometimes the paradise hides. Go seek it out, look high and low. It's bound to turn up, don't you know? It can't be very far away. Find it and make it stay. Sometimes the paradise hides beneath the cover of mystery. Sometimes the paradise hides. What is this game it wants to play? Why does it take this holiday? I want it ever by my side so I can enjoy the ride. Sometimes the paradise hides in places so very hard to find. Sometimes the paradise hides, but I won't rest until I see it back again and all around me. Someday I'll make it stay for good, and all will be as it should.
Okay. Okay, let's see. The next strategy I think I want to consider is the idea that optimism is very important to our happiness. I've mentioned previously that optimism is one of the 4 personality or character traits that is most correlated with happiness. In other words, happier people tend to be more optimistic than less happy people. And you know, this has to do with how we see things. Our world is out there. We're constantly perceiving it, and we're constantly evaluating it. We can see it as something, as a reality that's threatening and that's full of danger and disappointment, or we can choose to focus on what's good about it, what's beautiful, what's pleasant, what really makes us happy. Optimism has several meanings. The most literal meaning, I think, is to expect things to go well, to succeed, to be optimistic about the future. And that's very important. A lot of times that calls upon faith, and that brings us back to the idea of religion, why sometimes religious people are happier than other people, because when you have faith that God is caring for us, that the world is caring for us, that the things will go well. When we have a faith that things will go well, a lot of times it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. It'll cause us to behave in ways and to think in ways that will actually help things to go in the most successful of ways. And then the other meaning that optimism has come to have is the idea of seeing the glass as half full rather than half empty. It's with anything, with a person. Other people are our main source of happiness. Different surveys have demonstrated that. Generally, it's our significant other, like our girlfriend or wife or husband. And so a lot of times, optimism is very important in the sense that we can, with the people who are closest to us, our friends, our significant other, we have a lot of power to choose what to see in them. All of us have very positive qualities, and all of us have negative qualities. And the idea is that when we're optimistic, we overlook the negativity. We forgive the faults. We focus on the strengths. We recognize the strengths and the positive characteristics of other people. And of course, that applies not just to people, but to life in general. When we see the best in everything, it generally makes everything so much more pleasant. And again, it's like the idea of an acquired taste. A lot of times, like with food, we may not like it at first, or we may feel kind of neutral about it, neither liking nor disliking. But a lot of times we can learn to enjoy different foods, and the same principle applies to life. When we make the effort and we value our happiness, we will choose to see the best in things, to see the positive aspects of things, and as we make that effort, we will come to sincerely and truly enjoy whatever it is more and more. That's the idea. A lot of times when we just go through the motions, it's kind of like there's a philosophy of acting as if. If we make the effort to enjoy things, to enjoy people, that effort actually translates into an actual genuine enjoyment. So the more an effort we make, the more sincerely we'll enjoy whatever. Okay, the next item I want to go through is the idea that happy people are good people. This is interesting. I'm going to look into other studies about this, but one study that demonstrated this was a study they conducted with children, where they basically made little kids happy in a certain way, and then they asked them to perform an act of compassion or kindness toward another little kid. And they found generally that when the little kids were made happier, they were much more compassionate toward their peers, toward the other little children. So that when we're happy, it's like when we're happy, we're pleased. We have what we want, and then we can be magnanimous. We can be generous of ourselves, generous with our time. And it makes us better people. This has an interesting aside corollary related to our criminal justice system, because it's kind of ironic. We have to have a justice system to help us to be good. To provide an incentive for us to be good in the sense of punishment when we're not. And so part of the criminal justice system, I think, has to do with rehabilitation, with helping people who become criminals to learn how to become better, to learn not to give in to different kinds of impulses and desires that cause them to break the law. And the idea here is that it's conceivable that that if efforts were made to help people who are habitual offenders of the law become happier, that might actually be perhaps even a better strategy than punishment in ensuring that our crime levels are as low as possible, and that people just have an easy time as possible being good. With crime, it's interesting because what they've discovered in general is that about 50% of our character traits, our personality traits, are genetic. So, and then that applies to criminality. I mean, the idea is that a crime is 50% genetic, approximately, so that criminals have twice as hard a time being good as the rest of the population. So, so I think efforts made to teach people in danger of breaking the law how to become happier may really help them to be better, and that'll help us all to enjoy our lives more. Okay, another, I want to go through this again, the idea that that our significant other is our most relied on source of happiness. They conduct surveys asking people, well, what makes you happiest in life? And it is generally our wife or husband or children, friends, boyfriend, girlfriend. And so, when we consider that, we understand how valuable it is to invest a great deal of effort in that relationship. And this I think is a very important consideration for us here in America, because our divorce rate has been over 50% for years and years. I heard from someone recently that it's as high as 60%. I'm not sure about that, but it's certainly very high. And it's unfortunate because people fall in love and marry with the best intentions generally, and I think what happens is that we're never taught, like in school, to value our significant other, to really work on making that kind of relationship work. A lot of times life will teach us, when we experience our parents overcoming their problems, working things out, appreciating each other, deriving much happiness from each other. But if our parents aren't doing it very well, then it's difficult for us to learn. And again, it's not really taught in schools, which it really should be, because other people, significant others, are so important to us, and happiness is so important. But yeah, the idea is that since our significant other is our main source of happiness, we should probably invest more time in our relationship than we invest making money or seeking power or prestige or material things. Just all the kinds of things that we tend to sometimes hold more important than our mates, our significant others. Okay, here's something that's really good. A lot of us believe that as we get older, it's going to become, life is going to become a lot more difficult, and we're going to lose a great degree of our happiness. Fortunately, the research demonstrates that that as we get older, we don't get less happy. What happens is, as children, we experience the greatest extremes in happiness. In other words, when we're happy, we're extremely happy, and when we're not happy, we're extremely unhappy. And as we get older, those extremes kind of like level off, so that by the time we're pretty old, we don't get very happy and we don't get very unhappy, but we, in general, maintain the level of happiness of middle-aged people and younger people. And that's interesting, because that's something that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. I don't think it's something that's in the news. It's certainly not something we're taught in school, unless, let's say, we're taking a psychology course in college or something. And I think for us to understand this would really help us, because I think a lot of times we're afraid to become old because we're afraid it's going to be such a less pleasant life compared to the life we live now. So again, as we get older, we don't get less happy, and that's really good to know. Okay, the next consideration I want to talk about is that researchers have found that 90% of what we worry about never happens. I mean, we a lot of times have this tendency to worry. We worry about what will happen in the future regarding finances, our jobs, our livelihoods. I mean, we create all these kinds of worries, and it's obviously a kind of habit that we've developed over the years. It's something that becomes automatic, so we're not even aware that we're doing it often. And you know, worry distracts us from happiness, as we went into during the last show. So understanding this fact, this research finding that 90% of what we worry about never happens, I think would help many of us to become much happier through eliminating the worry that we go through that is so often so very unnecessary. Okay, let's see, we've got time for one more consideration. And that's the idea. Well, this one actually, I'm going to go over this next time also because it's very important. I'll just go over it very briefly right now. It's the idea that, you know, right now we're going through knowledge of what makes us happy, what doesn't, strategies and considerations designed to help us become happier. But see, what happens is that, you know, hearing this isn't enough usually. I mean, that's actually why I'll sometimes tend to repeat things. Partly it's because, you know, the things that I say relate to different aspects of life a lot. So, you know, a certain strategy or consideration will be related to many different topics. But another reason is that, you know, we need to integrate this knowledge into our personalities, into our basic habitual ways of thinking. So the idea is to have these considerations become so part of us that we don't have to think about them. They will become habit. And I'm going to get into this again next time because it is a very important consideration. Okay, well, that's all we have time for tonight. Thanks for watching. In the future, we'll explore other topics designed to help us better enjoy life. This is George Ortega saying, be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you join me again next week here on The Happiness Show.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.